What do Taraji P. Henson and the North Pole have in common? I'm going to tell you. Get a drink, get something to eat. Let's get into some history tea. So Taraji is a native Washingtonian. She was born, I think, in Southeast. She graduated high school, I think, at Oxon Hill. Like, she's from the DMV. And a lot of her family lineage is from this area, too. The Henson line is pretty well documented from a genealogy perspective. So guess who one of her relatives is? This person, I believe, is her great-grandfather's brother. Guess. You're not going to guess. Matthew Henson. Check out the way he's dressed. He's dressed for very cold weather, isn't he? That's because he is one of the first documented American people to go to the North Pole. There's actually a lot of controversy about whether Matthew and the team he was with actually made it to the North Pole. Like, a lot of people think they actually didn't make it to the official North Pole, but he is down in history as one of the first people to make it there. That's him, I believe, in the center. He's the one that placed the flag at the top there, and he stated that he saw no footprints there. And he's like the first person, I guess. And by first person, I mean first American is what I'm saying. Because there were people that lived in that region. So how are you going to be the first person to discover something that people lived there? But whatever, you know how it is with exploring. So Matthew was born in 1866 to a family that was actually free before the Civil War. And he grew up, his early years were there in Charles County, Maryland. Now, I don't know too much about his early childhood experiences, but he does recount how when he was a little boy, he saw Frederick Douglass speaking, and that was a very inspirational thing for him. That very much inspired him. So around age 12, he leaves DC and he goes to become a cabin boy out at sea. So cabin boys were the young men on ships that would help the crew out. They would run errands, take meals back and forth to the captain, and generally learn exploring skills. The captain of his ship actually taught him how to read and write. And he was taught a lot of really valuable skills about navigation and just overall exploring, and these would come in handy later in life. As a young man, he comes back to DC and he starts working in a department store. And while he's there, a very interesting man comes into that store, happened to be none other than Robert Peary. So Robert Peary was a Navy commander as well as an explorer. And I guess these two just got to rapping, they got to talking, and next thing you know, our friend Matthew is now traveling with Robert Peary and they're explorers together. Matthew and Robert spent probably about 20 years traveling together. They were working together for a very long time. The first few expeditions were in Nicaragua, but where things really got interesting is when they decided to conquer the Arctic and they went up to Greenland. So the people that are native to this region are the Inuit people. And that is the population of people that Matthew got to know very well. In fact, of the crew, he was the only one to learn their language fluently. He also learned how to operate their dog sleds in the very same style that they could operate them in. Apparently, the way that he could handle a dog sled was very impressive. And he was just overall considered to be a very respectful person of the culture and customs of the people of this region. By the way, this word right here is an offensive word. This is a derogatory term, and we should not use this word. I know that many people may not know that, but this is not a word that we use to describe the people that are indigenous to this region. So everything about this 1908 to 1909 expedition to the North Pole is pretty well documented. Both Robert and Matthew wrote books. They've been interviewed. There's obviously pictures. I mean, everything about it is well documented, except for something that a lot of people do not know. And if you come back for part 2, I will let you know what it is. Part 2 of me talking about Matthew Henson, aka Taraji P. Henson's great-great-great-grandfather's brother. I know, it's crazy. So I mentioned in my last video that it is very well documented, their whole expedition to the North Pole, allegedly, if that's where they made it to. That's well documented. They wrote books, they were interviewed, it was a whole thing. What is not well known is that both of these men, Robert Peary and Matthew Henson, both fathered children with Inuit women / girls while they were in Greenland. So in the 1950s, there was a French anthropologist who actually made this story very public. No one really knew about it. In the 50s, he's the one that actually wrote it out and talked about it. And then in the 80s, there was a Black neuroscientist who worked at Harvard who actually went to Greenland himself to track down the family members. And he wrote about it in this book, The North Pole Legacy, Black, White, and the Word That We Don't Say Anymore. His name is S. Allen Counter. They both had sons that were born in 1906. Matthew had been divorced, and he was divorced when his child was born. The following year, however, in 1907, he did get married to a woman named Lucy Ross. Okay, they did not have children together. The child that he has in Greenland is the only child that he's ever had. That's him and his wife Lucy later in life. Both Lucy and Matthew are buried in Arlington National Cemetery, by the way. Robert Peary was married and had children. Okay, married and had children. His wife Josephine's pretty cool. I might do a video about Josephine. She's actually pretty cool. She's pretty much a badass. She actually had their first child there in the Arctic, and she was known as a snow baby. Look at the little baby. That's their daughter, Marie. She was born in the Arctic, okay? Josephine was about that life. She used to travel with her man. Although Josephine's sister, you missed some things because, yikes. It was commonplace for men who were exploring to explore the local women and young girls that were indigenous to the places that they were visiting. And these men were no different. Matthew had a little boy. What's unknown to me, though, is how old that child's mother was when the child was born. I can't find it. I've looked it up. I cannot find it. I think it's safe to say she was young. This is a photo of her. I'm not sure if that is the baby they had together, if that's a child that maybe she had later in life, but this is a verified photo of her. Now, in the case of Robert Peary, on the other hand, he does have photos of his child's mother in his journals and in published books that he published later, right? That is her name. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, but it is documented that she was roughly about 14 or 15 years old. They had two kids together. He had a child that was older than the child that he had that was born around the same time that Matthew's son was born. They both had boys. In 1909, when the expedition was over, the men left the North Pole and never went back. They never went back. Their families in the North Pole never saw them again. They never publicly acknowledged that these children existed, although it is said that Matthew may have tried to reach out later in life, but I'm not sure if that's true. So this picture is from the 60s, and this is a photo of Matthew Henson's son that lived in Greenland. He lived to be in his 80s, and that's a photo of him. Check out the hair. This is a photo of Robert Peary's son, obviously later in life. This is a photo from 2011, but these are the Hensons of Greenland. These are the descendants of Matthew Henson in 2011. The Hensons are very proud to be Hensons. They are very, very proud to acknowledge their Black American ancestry, and they're very proud to be related to Matthew Henson. In fact, in the 80s, they actually got to come and travel to the U.S. to see where Matthew is buried. This is a photo of them at Arlington National Cemetery, seeing where Matthew Henson was eventually interred with his wife, Lucy. And they got to meet some of the Hensons here in the States. Now, what I don't know is if Taraji was a part of the family members that they met, but they did get to connect with their Henson family. And from what I've read, the Hensons of the U.S. were very excited to meet the Hensons of Greenland because it was a surprise to them to learn that Matthew had children because he did not have any children with his first or second wife. So they were actually really thrilled that he had descendants. Now, the Pearys, on the other hand, were not happy to hear that there were Pearys at the North Pole or in Greenland, right? They didn't like that. And yeah, but those people still exist. And that, my friends, is Taraji P. Henson's connection to the North Pole. There you have it.